So, back in 2015, a petition landed at the Supreme Court of the Philippines that was aiming to do something really big, to completely change the legal definition of marriage in the country. We're going to break down this landmark case and really get into how the court grappled with one of the biggest legal and social questions of our time. And right from the get-go, in the very first paragraph of the decision, the court made it clear this wasn't just some dry legal argument. Justice Leonen framed this as a deep dive into freedom, into diversity, into the very quality of our democracy. So that really set the stage for a decision that was going to be about way more than just a simple yes or no. All right, so here's our game plan for walking through this. First, we'll look at the big legal question that was asked. Then, we'll check out the arguments for making a change. After that, and this is the crucial part, we'll unpack exactly why the court said no, at least for now. And finally, we'll look at the message the court sent to Congress and what it all means going forward. So who kicked all this off? Well, the case was filed in 2015 by Falcis, who is an openly gay lawyer. And what he did was pretty bold. He didn't appeal a case from a lower court. Nope. He went straight to the top, to the Supreme Court, to directly challenge the constitutionality of the law itself. And at the heart of his petition was this really fascinating legal showdown. He was basically pitting a major law, the family code, against the highest law of the land, the Constitution. So here's the clash. On one side, you've got the family code, which very clearly says marriage is between a man and a woman. But on the other side, Falcis argued that this definition stomps all over our fundamental constitutional rights, things like equal protection, due process, the basic right to liberty. And that right there is the core conflict, a specific law versus the broad, powerful principles of the Constitution. Now, with a topic this huge, you'd think we'd get a big debate on the merits of same-sex marriage, right? But that's not what happened. The court dismissed the case, and they did it unanimously. But, and this is so important, it wasn't because they decided against same-sex marriage. It was all about legal procedure, about technical rules. So understanding those rules is key to understanding this whole thing. Before any court, especially the Supreme Court, can even think about deciding a case, it has to ask a really basic but super important question. Is there a real live dispute here? This isn't just a picky rule. It's the foundation of what gives a court its power. So what does actual case or controversy even mean? Well, think of it this way. Courts are problem solvers, not advice givers. There has to be a real conflict between people with opposing legal claims. They can't just weigh in on hypothetical, what-if scenarios. They need a real problem to solve. And this, right here, is where the petition hit its first massive roadblock. During the oral arguments, the petitioner himself admitted he'd never actually been denied a marriage license. Why? Because he'd never applied for one. Because he didn't have a partner to marry. Now, for the court, this was a huge deal. It meant there was no real injury, no concrete problem to fix, no actual controversy. Okay, hurdle number 2 is a concept called legal standing. Basically, you can't just sue because you don't like a law. You have to prove that the law has personally and directly harmed you, or that you're in immediate danger of being harmed by it. The petitioner's argument was that the law's normative impact, just the fact that it exists, and that it impaired his search for a partner, was his injury. But the court found that to be way too abstract. They said that those feelings, while totally valid on a personal level, just don't meet the legal requirement for a direct injury that you need to challenge a law in court. And the third and final reason for the dismissal was the hierarchy of courts. Our legal system is built like a pyramid for a good reason. Cases that need facts and evidence to be presented should start at the bottom, in trial courts. The Supreme Court's job isn't to hear evidence for the first time. It's to review legal questions that have already been thrashed out below. Justice Francis Jardaliza really hammered this point home during the arguments. He explained that to decide on something as complex as marriage, the court needs a solid factual record. It needs to hear from experts, sociologists, psychologists, who can be questioned and cross-examined. And that kind of work, that happens in a trial court, not the Supreme Court. This petition just didn't have that foundation. But you know, the court didn't just dismiss the case and call it a day. They used this as an opportunity to send a really clear and powerful message to a whole other branch of government, Congress. They basically laid out why they believe this issue really belongs in the hands of our lawmakers. And here's their reasoning. In the eyes of the law, marriage isn't just a romantic idea. It's a huge, incredibly complicated bundle of rights and burdens. It's a legal package deal that's woven into just about every corner of our legal system. And I mean, just look at this. Once you start pulling on that one thread of defining marriage, it affects everything. We're talking inheritance, taxes, employee benefits, even criminal law. Insurance, adoption, making medical decisions for a loved one, Social Security, the list goes on and on. It's a massive legal web. And that gets us to the court's main point. Untangling and reweaving this giant legal web requires careful, precise, and detailed work. It needs public hearings, debates, and thoughtfully crafted laws. And that is a job for Congress, not something that can be done with one single court ruling, especially one that came from a petition with so many procedural problems. So, after all that, what does this mean for the future of marriage equality in the Philippines? Was this the end of the road? Well, not at all, actually. The court's decision pointed to a very specific path forward. Honestly, the two most important words in the entire ruling in the entire case might be "for now." The court did not rule that same-sex marriage is unconstitutional. They just said that this specific case was the wrong way to ask the question. They very deliberately left the door wide open for a future case, one brought by actual couples who were denied a license, a case that carefully builds a factual record in the lower courts first. And the court didn't hold back. They also had some pretty strong words for the petitioner himself, saying his strategy was a disservice to the cause he was fighting for. It's a really stark reminder that when you're dealing with constitutional law, passion is great, but it's not enough. Strategy, preparation, and following the rules of the game are absolutely critical. So in the end, this whole case leaves us with this huge, fundamental question about how our democracy works. When society is ready to evolve its understanding of basic rights, who should have the final say? Should it be judges interpreting a constitution written long ago, or should it be our lawmakers who represent the people today? This ruling didn't give us the answer, but it sure did frame the debate for years to come.